Questions on Friday, September the 4th. We've got Dr. David Newman here, RoseHeart Hypnotherapy Success Center. And we're going to talk about something that I find very interesting, and I think you will too. Handwriting analysis.
Handwriting analysis, it tells everything that a person
You're telling me that when somebody signs your name or you look at something they've written, you can pretty much tell their personality by looking at the writing.
I can tell you everything that the person knows. In fact, one of the things that we do in our practice is when the person comes in and we do a clinical intake, we have them fill out some forms, okay? But one of the forms is just a blank piece of paper, and what I ask them to do is tell me about the issue that you're coming to see me for. What have you done to try to correct it? What's worked? What hasn't? You know, just tell me a little story. Because I've directed it towards that issue, the subconscious now is, first of all, it's incapable of lying. So it's telling me exactly what it believes is true. And it tells me exactly what is going on with them regarding that particular situation. And I base my treatment on it. And it's 100% accurate.
Okay. What do you look for when you're looking at someone's handwriting? Can we all learn to analyze handwriting?
Yeah, you can. It takes a little bit of time. The type of handwriting analysis I perform is more psychological rather than looking for fraud or verification of a signature. But absolutely, you can tell just an enormous amount about anybody. Signatures are the one thing that people seem to like the most. And signatures are the one area that really tells you the least. And the reason is because a signature is how the person wants to portray themselves to the outside world. Okay, it's not saying this is how I really am. From a psychological standpoint, I want to know how you really are. Okay, so yeah, I do look at your signature, you know, when you sign your documents, stuff like that, because that tells me how you are.
Okay, we've got some handwriting samples of some very famous people. Like Elvis Presley.
And this is when he's really getting started, but he's starting to have trouble with his physical side of things. He's been pushing himself a lot. The doctors are putting him on medication. And one of the things that he's mentioning here, just reading it, is, you know, I've never really asked the doctor why my hands are beginning to shake the way that they do and things like that. So he's already starting to have a bit of body breakdown. But here's the interesting thing. If you look in, again, you look at the N, you see the kind of pointy up there. The M is also a little bit on the pointy side. And you also notice the margins. This was a blank sheet of paper, so the black lines are just from the copier. But you notice that the far left margin, that's the way that we hold ourselves accountable. That's our expectations for ourselves. And you notice his are right up at the edge. He held himself up to extremely high standards.
So you're telling me if you look at somebody writing on a piece of paper, if they're writing very close to the edge, to the left side of the margin,
they hold themselves very, very strict. Okay. They have very high standards, almost unattainable standards. Now, in this particular case, if you go over to the right side of the margin, that's where we hold other people accountable. And if you notice, he gives the other people a little bit more latitude than what he gives himself, but not a whole lot. Well, when I talked to David Stanley, who was Elvis Presley's baby stepbrother, he said that. He said that Elvis would work and work and work. It had to be just perfect every single time. And when he put people around, very rarely could they live up to his expectations. In fact, he was known to fire his associates and everything repeatedly, multiple times every week, because they simply couldn't live up to what he wanted them to do.
Okay. What about when someone is writing on paper and the sentence slants upward or slants downward? Does that indicate anything?
It does. If it slants upward, they're more optimistic. If it begins to slant downward, they're more depressed or they're more pessimistic. And where we can see that, excellent, is right here in Michael Jackson's handwriting.
Okay, if you put up Michael Jackson's
handwriting.
He is slanting
He's
downward.
slanting down. Okay, again, though, you can see where he's holding himself up to very, very high standards.
Because he writes to the...
He writes to the far left side of the margin, and he holds people on the right side. But here's the interesting thing about him. As you go through and you start looking at it, we can tell that he has a lot of disconnects with what he's doing. But if you look at the points of the M's, okay, the M's and the N's, those tell you very, very fast that he's very, very much on the left side of his brain. So he's very technical, which he was, but he's also very, very closed in. He's not letting people know what he's really all about. He's projecting.
What about somebody who does script, writes, and then goes into printing and then goes back to writing again. That's what Michael Jackson did.
Yeah, Michael Jackson does that a lot, and all that's doing is he's switching more from his left side of the brain to the right side of the brain, going back and forth.
Okay. One other one I want to show is the very first one of Elvis Presley that you have, with his signature.
Okay.
It's on, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was the last
next
one.
but
Go to
I
the
want to
next
show that one
okay,
in just a second.
That's the Las Vegas one, Travis.
In fact, let me talk about this one just for a second. I'll make it really quick. This one is really interesting because everyone knows that Elvis Presley died, and he died in Graceland. But there's always been controversy. How did he die? His stepbrother, David Stanley, is convinced that he died of suicide, and he went into great detail explaining why. This is the first time I've seen a handwriting sample of Elvis Presley. This was one of the last ones he ever wrote, where if you notice his signature is kind of crossed out. Mm-hmm. That is a suicidal indicator. He's crossing himself out. He doesn't exist anymore. So if I was to look at this, the first thing I would do if the person came into my office is I would refer them to a psychiatrist because they're suicidal. And that's what that's telling me. So that's kind of interesting. However, this other one is one of the very first ones when he was in the military. He was a private first class. And this is where he's talking about things. And if you look at his writing, his M's, the tips of the M's are much more rounded. He has a much more even flow, but he's still very protected. See how that T comes over? All of that is self-protection.
Okay.
So it's
David,
really cool.
With people listening, we got about 20 seconds
Sure.
left. What do you look for in writing? What if it's flamboyant? Does that?
The flamboyance, yeah, that leads to the type of person they are. They're bigger than life. They want to be bigger in life. They're also extremely creative when they're very very
somebody
big.
who writes real small, tiny.
They're usually much more analytical, and they're very very precise, and they're trying to get everything in there that they possibly can.
Okay. Want more information on this? You can give David Newman a call. Your telephone number?
888-604-9997.
Okay. RoseHeart Hypnotherapy Success Center. Always interesting to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let's see. Tomorrow, or Monday, Larry Brown will be with us. That's Labor Day. Have yourself a good weekend. See you Monday. Bye-bye.